everybody, and welcome to another episode of Book Goodies, the author series of podcasts. I am one of your hosts, Deborah Carney, and today we're introducing a new host, Karen Garcia. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. How are you today, Debbie?
Good. And today we are interviewing author, publisher, marketer, Claudia Christian. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me. Hi, Karen. Hi, Debbie.
Hello.
Debbie, should I call you Debbie? Yeah.
Debbie is fine. Yep.
Okay.
And, okay, so Claudia, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks that are listening and tell them a little bit about your background?
My name is Claudia Hall Christian. I use the Hall, which is my mother's maiden name, because there's an actress called Claudia Christian who did some pornography, and I just want to try and separate myself from that.
Oh, my.
Yeah. I am an author. I write. My specialty is serial fiction. I write the Denver serial, which I've done for the last 4 years, and we call that sweet and crunchy serial fiction. It's basically an urban fiction that has a lot of action and a lot of romance and a lot of fun stuff. I also write a fairly intense thriller series, and that's called the Alex the Faye thriller series. Last year I had a contract to write a serial in Fort Worth, Texas, and I wrote The Queen of Cool, which is out there. And next year we're going to start a serial in Boston.
So when you say you're writing a serial about a particular city, that just means that that's where you don't necessarily have to live there, but you just focus on it takes place in that area.
It takes place in that city. And I write traditional serial fiction, which means that it's published as it's written. So we publish primarily originally on websites, in blog formats. For example, the Denver serial, which, like I said, has been going 4 years, and right now we're at chapter 217. It publishes every day, 6 days a week, one chapter a week. And so the new serial will publish probably 2 chapters a month, which is what I did for the Queen of Cool. I say we because, it takes a whole team to get these serials together. I do the writing. I have a variety of editors who do the editing, and then it's like this back and forth, both content and proofreading before it goes up. So it's a lot of work. It's very fun. Everybody who's involved works fast, is on the time schedule. So,
wow.
But, it's a lot. So Denver serial has 4 chapters a month, and if I add a new one, then that will be two extra chapters a month. And then I also write the Alex the Faye series. It publishes every February, so there are 4 of those so far. So yeah, I've been very lucky to have such great characters and such exciting stories that they're really fun to write.
That's just really cool. Now, are these subscription-based sites, or they're just out there?
Well, the sites are basically out there. The Alex the Faye series comes out in paperback and ebook before we post it to the internet.
Okay.
The Denver serial works in the reverse order. So because, again, it's a serial fiction, which literally means it's a traditional serial fiction, which literally means that it is published as it is written. That's what happens. I write it, it goes up. I write it, it goes up. I mean, it goes through editing with some content editing that happens before it goes up. But it's like the purest form of writing and reader interaction, because the readers then cannot really affect the serial. Sometimes I post, do you think this character is going to have a girl or a boy? Or probably the biggest one that happened is we had this serial killer who was killing kids through the city of Denver, and he killed a whole bunch of kids over some long period of time. And I had wanted him to get arrested and have the families have a trial and all that stuff, but my editors were having none of it, and so I put it out there to the community, and they said, not only did they want him killed, but they want him to suffer tremendously. So that's how serial fiction works. Okay. It's how Dickens did it. It's how Conan Doyle did it. It's how Armistead Maupin did it. It's how I always mess up the lady who wrote Sex and the City. It's how she did it. It's
Okay.
writer-reader interaction.
Wow. And I'm just trying to figure out, so how, so it goes up on the website, and then does it come out published on, like, a Kindle as an ebook? Or you just, because I know there's some people that would avidly follow the whole stories on the blog, obviously, as it's written, but then do you have it in book form for people who, want to just read sections at a time?
Oh, sure. I mean, there are 6 Denver serial books. There'll be a 7th this year. And like I said, the Alex Safay books work in the opposite. The book is released and then it's serialized. Okay. So people who don't want to buy the book, or who like the serial format, or who simply just can't afford it, have a chance to read and keep up. And it's available, in every format and every bookstore, from Kindle to ebooks to Smashwords to iTunes, and certainly in paperback. We did a lot of market research before we started, the group of us, and what we discovered was that people really only buy hardbacks because they have to, because they want to get that first read of a hardback, but then no one likes them. They're heavy. No. You can't read them in the bathtub, all the rest of that stuff. And the only reason publishers make them is they make more money off them. They make $1 a hardback versus 25 cents, which is what they make off a paperback.
Okay, that's really
so we just publish paperbacks, which people.
And it seems like the perfect type of. And when did you start these?
I started the Denver Serial in June of 2008.
Wow. Because that seems to be the perfect fit for ebooks, because you can, like you said, as soon as you're done putting it up on the blog, you can then go, boom, up on Kindle, or, everywhere on the electronic side. And it's easy and fast for people to consume it. And, like I said, if they don't have time to go to the blog every day, or they're afraid they missed something, they can go to get the book. And then you've also got the traffic from the people who go right to Amazon or Barnes & Noble that grab the book, and then they want to know more, and you send them back to the website.
Mm-hmm. So. That's how it works. I mean, again, that's how serial fiction has always worked.
Wow.
So, you probably have heard the stories of people being so desperate to know what happens to a character in a serial fiction that they meet the boats that are carrying it over, So, I mean, that's like the penultimate of actual serial fiction. And, again, I always say that Charles Dickens is my mentor. I couldn't, even compare myself to him, but I try and just do what he did, and what Steph Maupin did, and what a lot of other really great serial fiction authors have done. So, it's all about having exciting stories and gripping tearjerkers and making people cry and making them laugh and making them cheer and making them feel like that when they come to the website that it's family.
That's really awesome. Karen, doesn't it sound like a lot of the role-playing game type stuff, and just putting it into, more of a structured format?
Kind of, I am a dyed-in-the-wool gamer, and I do have a lot of friends that do a lot of fiction about the characters that they have created in various game worlds and whatever. And it sounds incredibly similar, but this is obviously so much more in depth. Because to have 200, how many did you say now? 217?
I think that this week we're at 217. Yeah,
that's incredible. That's a lot of writing. So
yeah.
Do you write every day, or do you just devote several days of the week to just kind of blast it all out there?
I write every day. I work a really long day. I get up in the morning and go out with my husband, and he leaves for work. We go for a run and walk, and then I sit down at my desk. I do work social media and interact with my readers and have conversations and send emails in the mornings until about 10, and then I write until about 5. Make dinner. It's just, last year I was doing about 40,000 words. I had deadlines for 40,000 words every single month. And so it was like people will talk about doing NaNoWriMo. but I had those deadlines. Some months, like the Fae books I usually start writing. Like I'll start writing one this month, and when I'm working on that, then the word count goes way up. So the Denver serials are usually between 2,000 and 3,000 words. And so again, if we start another serial, we'll find the right partners next year for the one in Boston, then that'll be another 2 or 3. It'll be another 6,000 words, 6,000 to 8,000 words a month.
Right. Oh my goodness.
That's incredible. Fast. I have all.
Well, I was going to say, type fast, and the edit process on that must be pretty much down to the wire. You have it all laid out and what happens when and everything to get it all done.
Really fabulous people, and I've just also been really lucky. I have really interesting characters, and I'm a pantser. So I just start, and it all happens. The biggest problem I've had is that I wear out keyboards. And so I finally ended up getting, I know, isn't that funny? I finally ended up getting a Steel series, which is actually a gaming keyboard. And this keyboard I've had the longest. I got it last June, and so it's lasted about a year, which is the longest any keyboard has had. And since I type so fast, I need a keyboard that has a really fast response. And so, they're not paying me for this, but those are the problems that I have. I burn out keyboards pretty fast, and I went through like 4 last year until I asked a friend of mine who's a programmer who works as much as I do, and that's what he uses.
Yeah. You have to have especially with gaming, having a responsive keyboard is really important, because you don't want to have something that is the action on it is slow or anything like that, and especially when you're typing so quickly. I mean, that's a lot of words to put out there. I actually the NaNoWriMo thing, of course, is in November, and for those of our listeners who don't know what that is, it's the national. Oh my gosh, I just totally blanked on it.
National Writing Month. Something.
I can't come up with it.
Yeah,
that's me.
November, I think. So National November. I don't know. Anyway, but NaNoWriMo is you write 50,000 words in a month, and they've got a great little website where you go ahead and you can upload, and they'll do the word count, and they put you in groups, based on what your interests are or where you happen to live. They actually have a couple of extra ones during the year. They've got one in the spring, and there's one that actually just started today that I have been suckered into. One of in my gaming circle of friends is another author named Mercedes Lackey, and she actually encouraged me to do this month. So I currently have 1,200 words in there from this morning.
Yay!
So we'll see how the rest of the day goes. But yeah, I bow to your prowess, because man, that took a long time this morning.
I think it's really different. For me, I go where the story goes, and sometimes I have the story, and I can write 10,000 words a day, and sometimes it's just slogging along 500 words. It's tough when you write serial fiction, because you've got to. I don't have a choice. If I don't, at this point, Denver Serial has between 30 and 50,000 people on the site every single month. And so if I don't put a chapter up, my e-box is full of emails from people around the world saying, where is my Denver Serial? I cannot start my day without it. So it's an awesome problem to have. But
but goodness. Do you storyboard your serial out in advance?
Mm-mm.
No,
I find that it doesn't. That's not very helpful for me. That I can't ever predict where something is going to go.
Okay.
I don't ever know. I have some vague ideas. Like the Queen of Cool is probably the best kind of laboratory to look at, because I did it last year, and I had a very strict deadlines. I had this contract. I had to get 2 chapters a month, and I had to go 26 chapters because I had a year. So, and then I was done, and that was it. And so I did some, I put up on my whiteboard what goals I wanted to hit at each chapter and where I thought it would go. But in the end, it went someplace totally different that I had no idea was going to go.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's just how things work for me. Again, I totally bow to the prowess of people who love to write outlines. I tend to be absolutely a list person. I check things off my list. I love my lists, but I don't do that with my writing. I just go. I sit down and I just go.
And that's really important for our listeners to hear, because there are so many people out there that want to write a book, but they only have the beginning idea, and they're like, well, if I don't know where it's going to go, I'm not going to bother starting, because, they've maybe heard that you have to outline, or you have to storyboard, or you have to do this, you have to do that. And you're the perfect example of, no, you don't. You just can sit down and start writing and let the story take you where the story's going to take you. And it's like having a discussion. Like, I can start a podcast going in one direction, and in the middle of it, we totally change directions and make it something totally different because of the discussion. So when you're writing, you're having a discussion with your characters. You're just pulling out, what's going to happen, and they drive the book. And your writing goes wherever your characters take you. And you have certain constraints, like, they're in this particular city. But what happens, like you said, sometimes you let your readers give you some input, and sometimes, it just goes where it tells you where to go.
That's certainly how it works for me. I mean, the way that I talk about it is that I am just a conduit for the story, that the story exists. There's a lot of stuff, people have asked me, why did I do that and why did I do that? I mean, the first book of the Alex the Fae series, the character is so deeply depressed. I mean, if I was making choices, that's not my choice. Right. That's not what I would choose for the first book. The first book of any series would be to have a character that's so deeply depressed that she can barely get out of bed. Her family has to trick her to leave the house. She's just really depressed. It's not, and just the language that it's written in is really written around to give the reader the feeling of what it's like to feel that constriction and that depression. So I feel like the stories are there. I try and tell them, and I just try and get out of the way. My mantra is really settle down and get it done. Get out of the way and get it done. And then I have some great editors,
Mm-hmm. Well, and the editors probably help you to keep your story on track for things that may have happened in the past that you need to be some consistency with, and they can find things where you may have wandered off track a little bit, or if something that a character does, it doesn't quite make sense, or things like that.
Well, I mean, I think that would be an interesting idea. I haven't had that experience yet. Again, I have big list keepers, so I keep a lot of those lists myself. What they usually do is they talk about where things will go. But even then, because I so step out of the way, the stories are always surprising. I mean, one of the comments that I always get is I can never predict what's going to happen. There's always a surprise or a twist or turn, and it's not intentional. It's just how the story is. And some of it, sometimes I do a bit of writing sleight of hand, which is really look over here, look over here, look over here. Oh, we're going this way. And sometimes that's intentional. But, it's like being a magician, look over here if you really want to, particularly in serial fiction, if you really want to get people's interest. That's how you do it. But, outside of just those little tricks, mostly I just tell a story. And people say the characters feel really real. They think about them a lot. They feel like they're family or they're friends. And I think that some of that is why.
Well, and I do know we've talked to many authors that actually do have your same. They don't do serial. You're the first person I've talked to that does serial fiction. But a lot of authors do say that they're the conduit for the story. And if you think back in time before we had rules and how should things be done, there's always been storytellers. And like you said, with Charles Dickens, no one told him he had to structure his stories a certain way. He just did it. And
he was very talented.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's no way to that we can only underestimate the talent that these people had. But yes, no one told him how to do it. And certainly there were a lot of rule breakers, like Judy Blume, like James Joyce, people we grew up with and don't even really think of were absolutely rule breakers. And I think that some of, some of the flip side to this is that I really get a lot of the hail that comes at women now. Because I'm kind of the figurehead on a ship of strong women going through difficult times.
Okay.
And so I get a lot of that hail, and so I look to these people and see how much they got. I mean, Judy Blume's books were banned. I mean, James Joyce was banned and it was a Supreme Court case to get his books published in the United States. I mean, it's crazy. So other people have had the same problems.
And to me, it's very enlightening and freeing to be able to tell authors that, write how you want to write. And then when you're finished with it, go back through or have editors go back through, but don't try to conform to a particular type of thing. There's a lot of people that are crossing genres, like they're mixing genres up, like, fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal. And, used in the past, it would just be, you fit into one or the other. And now it's like, no, they're just like mashing it all together. And I think that's partially because of the ability to be able to self-publish now. And the public isn't being restricted as to what they're able to get because it's not the traditional publishers doing the gatekeeping anymore. It is, people like you that are going out there and publishing your own way. Now, why don't you explain to us a little bit about, you said you're a publisher. Explain a little bit about how that came about and how you came to that decision.
Well, I wanted to back up a little bit and comment on what you had said, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay. I think that, because we grew up with this model of publishing of, these houses in New York or these houses back east, there's a few on the West Coast, we believe that publishing has always been that way. And we talk about back in the day. But when we talk about back in the day, we're talking about the 1980s. Yeah. I mean, when people like Dickens wrote, there weren't genres.
Right.
When Conan Doyle wrote, there weren't genres.
Exactly.
There weren't conglomerate publishers who had to purchase books to pay their Wall Street people,
right.
To pay their shareholders. And so if we're going to really talk about publishing, we have to start there.
Okay.
That publishing has only been this way for the last 20 or 30 years. And so we think about it as them as gatekeepers and them as legitimizers, and to a certain extent they are. But what we have to also understand is that in the last 20 or 30 years, publishers have functioned primarily to feed their shareholders. They haven't published primarily to feed the reader. They haven't published primarily to feed the author. They haven't published to primarily feed anybody other than their shareholders. And that's what they do now. And now that the Wall Street has changed and you've got people who will buy a stock today and trade it this afternoon, and that whole thing has come about in the last 10 or 15 years. The translation to books means that they're not gatekeepers at all. All they're interested in is publishing whatever it is that's going to generate them enough money to keep their shares up. And that's the publishing model that we talk about as being legitimate, as we talk about as being, like you were just saying, we're used to this idea of genres. Well, genres are just a shorthand way for people who are trying to serve shareholders, of trying to trying to pigeonhole authors so that they can feed a massive hungry. I mean, think about flocks and flocks of chickens. Mm-hmm. That's what shareholders are. Because if you don't feed them well, they're going to leave. And the moment that they leave, you lose all your financing. Your stock starts to crash. You can't pay your employees. It's this whole thing that we're now seeing even with Facebook, that it's just a change in the way that Wall Street works. Well, first it's a change in the way that publishing works, and then there's been this massive change in the way that Wall Street works. And so publishers are constantly on this treadmill, publishers and editors. In the time that I've been involved in publishing, we ran a holistic health and well-being media company from 2001 to 2006. From 2001 to now, that's 11 years. Things have changed so dramatically that you just can't even fathom it. Editors who in 2001 were working on 20 manuscripts are working on 200 manuscripts now. Wow. There's just no way. And what the publishing company wants to do is they want, think about chickens. They want to constantly feed chickens, get that feed out there, which is the money that they're making from books from people who can sell, 10 million books, Snooki.
Yep.
Not there.
That's really funny because someone else brought up the fact that, the whole Jersey Shore cast gets book contracts when, quote unquote, real writers, because of course we know the Jersey Shore people didn't write them books themselves, real writers are out there and can't get a book in the door. But because Snooki is who she is, she can write a book and sell a gazillion copies just because.
Right, to feed the chickens. I mean, again, it makes total sense. As for publishing and printing and writing in support of authors and books and the way that publishing works, this has never been like this. And I think that if I were to say something to authors, it would be that. Publishing has never been like this, ever. And when people talk about self-publishing and how small that is, and you can't really publish your own thing, and you have to, at least you're not self-publishing, or whatever. What they don't understand is that everybody's self-published. Everybody you can think of, everybody I can think of that I admire from history or history authors or from an AP English class, they all self-published. Dickens owned his own publishing company. Walt Whitman published his own poems. James Joyce, famously published his own work. And so, Virginia Woolf published her own work. So the people that we really admire and are in our, or at least that I do, and take as role models or mentors, have been did this 100 years ago, 200 years ago. I mean, remember the Bible didn't have a publisher. So,
yeah, the Bible, the Quran, any of the, none of that stuff.
The oldest printed text. None did, neither did the Buddhist Sutras, nothing,
Yep, it was just there, and then people did what they did with it. So that's really great information because, again, there's a lot of writers out there that still think if they aren't published with a traditional publishing house that they're not legitimate. And I am along with your line of thinking that, no, there are a lot of people that got rejected by major publishing houses before they became successful. And there are a lot of people who are publishing under their own imprint or under small press or, completely and totally on their own. And they're quite successful because no matter who you publish with, you got to do your own marketing. And that's what sells books. It isn't the publishing company name. It's the writer and the writing that sells your books.
That has been true at least for the last 10 years. I mean, maybe there was a golden gravy day 30 years ago or 40 years ago or, I don't know. I've never sat down with Stephen King to ask him. He would be the person to ask, but maybe there was. I doubt it. I think that publishers have always, particularly ones on Wall Street, have always been trying to feed, what were once goats are now, a billion little chickens. And so, what are you going to do? You got to feed them. So I think that it's an interesting point. I think that the whole point of the legitimacy is some way for this entire system to get people to buy into it. I mean, I see agents openly mock authors on Twitter. It's just infuriating to me, saying the meanest things, of course it's all anonymous, the meanest things you could possibly think of because they're an agent. And, an agent, I've never seen, and I've known a lot of realtors because I've known a lot of actors and singers and things like that. But I've known a lot of realtors. I have never met a realtor who dogged a property as badly as an agent talks about writers. It's just unbelievable to me. And they have no job, basically. I mean, they've
Their
completely
job is being eliminated.
Right, they've completely written them. They're completely written out, except for awesome, agents. There are a few of them that are really, taking on the business manager role and developing authors and getting to do it. But most of them are just ridiculous, and so the entire system is crumbling. And so when you asked me, well, how did I get into publishing? What happened is that because I have run this holistic health and well-being program, I knew a lot of people in publishing in New York. And so it was 2008, I had The Fae, which is the first of the Alex the Fae series. It was out to publishers. I had a couple of agents who were interested. I had a couple of editors who were reading it. And what I heard from more than one person is, you better pull this book because publishing is going to crumble. And the reason that I was to pull it was that if I had gotten engaged in a contract there, I would be stuck.
Yep.
And that happened to a lot of authors. They had contracts with agents, or they had contracts with publishers. And since publishing fell apart, and then what happened is that I called my usual group of friends who say yes, and asked them if they wanted to start a publishing company, and surprisingly they said yes. And so the group of us said, okay, we're going to move forward, and we filed the corporate papers on November 28th, and on December 8th, the New York publishers let go of 50% of their employees, of their editors, of their not the people who are the runners, actual people who run the business. And so it was just very good luck, So it's kind of like stepping through the crumblings of a falling building. Now we're at a place where we've lost a couple of people in our business, which is fine. They've moved on to really awesome projects, and we are moving this year into creating a publishing co-op, where we will have editors and authors who have equal standing in a true cooperative model. This, I don't know, you probably know this, or you may not, is that the UN has declared that 2012 is the year of the co-op. And so we are learning about co-ops and talking to lawyers. And by the end of the year, we'll have it all done. And so editors, authors, there's 2 other people on our board of directors. Myself and 2 other people will be the board of directors. And then we'll have a co-op. And starting next year, we'll start inviting. I've already spoken to a couple of editors who are just waiting for us to get our stuff together, and that's what's going to happen.
And how do you have time for that while you're writing 40,000 words a month?
I have a lot of energy.
That's, and like in the industry that Karen and I are in, it's called, adapt or die.
Right.
Like the industry that we're in for our main day jobs is internet marketing and affiliate marketing. And a lot of people still don't know what that is. And the people that do know who it is, the people who are successful are the people who adapt and change. They aren't the people trying to feed the chickens. They're the people who are entrepreneurs, who are finding a need and filling it. And that's exactly what you did. You found a need, you filled that need. You're growing your business according to what you see as what is needed in your industry. And that's exactly what Karen and I do. If we don't adapt to the changes that are going on the internet and in our industry, and with, legal things that come down the pike, you mentioned, James Joyce and his Supreme Court. Well, we have, little legal things that people are starting to figure out about the internet marketing industry, and some states are trying to do certain things, and there are roadblocks, and we have to get around those roadblocks and be creative. And that's what you did, and I admire that. And I did not know it was the UN year of the co-op. So now I have
something new every day.
Now that's something else Karen and I have to go look into.
Co-ops. We go to Equal Exchange is a coffee company, and they're actually some of the people that motivated us. It's one of those weird things is that while I appreciate what you're saying, and in hindsight, I look so smart. And certainly all of us are kind of very smug about how smart we look. The truth of it is that I went for what I was passionate about. I love serial fiction, and I have loved serial fiction since I was a little kid. And I was in San Francisco in the middle. I was working on an AmFAR grant in the middle of the AIDS crisis, and there was Tales of the City written by Amstead Maupin. And I think I thought, that's what I want to do. It really, it stayed with me. It nurtured me. Amstead Maupin gave us a language for us to be able to even talk about AIDS. I don't think that we would be able to talk about it just like I am, if he hadn't written Tales of the City. And so all of us are impacted by the work of serial fiction. And I think that I saw that and thought, that's what I want to do. I feel really passionate about it. And to bring it, so much so that I'm willing to stretch to bring it to cities that I don't live in, which means that I need to talk to people and do extra research. And I'm on Google Maps, and I have a Google Earth account, and I have special plugins for Google Earth. And, I'm constantly interacting and trying to get the places, and then I go there and do a bunch of marketing, and it's a tremendous effort. But I feel so passionate about serial fiction and trying to bring something that's interesting and belongs to a city, and that also highlights the city. Like in Fort Worth, I know more about Fort Worth than my friends who live there. I was like, I went there, and I was like, well, why don't you go here? Or why don't you go there? I tend to hang out with ghost hunters, and so I was like, well, why aren't we ghost hunting here?
Nice.
So they're like trying to get it all worked out so I can come down and we can ghost hunt in the tunnels under the stockyards. So,
how fun!
If that happens, then certainly I'll have an overall group of thing. But again, I think that what we did is we went with what we're passionate about. The president of our company is very passionate about the cooperative model and has spent hours and hours running numbers, and he's a statistician and running numbers of what would work and what makes the most sense and how everybody would make enough money and how we would be able to share and what we would do as a company and what the collective would do and how we could get people involved who might, like Karen, you might write this thing and you might finish it, but you might also, it might take you 3 or 4 years. How do we get you engaged and involved? How could you be involved? And it would make sense to you to be a part of the collective. And so those are the things that he's so passionate about, and that's really some of what's driving us forward. The other woman that's on our team was really interested in engaging people about their history and their family history. And so her big push is to try and get us to get involved with people and to help people publish books who, are listening to grandma's stories. So there are a couple of companies out there that do that, and we may connect with them or engage with them or be a service for them. I'm not sure. We'll have to look at it, that's what she's really passionate about. And that's what we're moving forward with. I think personally, you have to find what you're passionate about, and then find, you said find the niche and da. I think that the niches are there. If you're passionate about it, then somebody else is too, and you should follow what it is that you're really passionate about. Because, and honestly, I don't mean to get all spiritual or godly, but if you're passionate about something, you are put here to do it.
Yep. And
if you don't do it, you're just wasting everybody's time. And I think that about stories. Some of it is you can hear the unkindness in from myself. I think that about stories. This story came to me. It is my job to get it done. And if I don't get it done, then I have failed these characters and this story. I got to get it done.
Yep.
And I think that people kind of miss it in a whole ego dynamic of, what am I going to do, and why don't I have a publisher, and I'm going to pay some snide, crappy agent to tell me how much I suck.
Yeah. And,
why not just engage your reader?
Yep.
And that's the dynamic that matters. The rest of this stuff doesn't matter because the readers are buying your work. So when people say to me, I'm waiting to get picked up by a big publisher, I think, well, you must be rich.
Because you're going to wait a really long time.
Wait a really long time because there are readers out there that would read it today.
Yeah. Yep, and you're losing money by waiting. And we have a friend of ours that totally has... he was traditionally published by a business book publisher that publishes strictly nonfiction, and he predicted a couple of years ago that this company is going to crumble. It hasn't totally yet, because I've heard of new authors that are like all excited they're being signed by this company, and yet I see what they did to our friend and what happened with him, and he is totally self-publishing everything now. He will never work with a traditional publishing house with a contract again. And he not only is writing his own stuff, he crowdfunded his next 3 books. He did it before it was popular. He did it a year ago, and he raised $35,000 to be able to write 3 books. So he says he got his own book advance from people that want to read his books. And, for him, that's what's going to work going forward. And he, broke all the rules. And, we're surrounded by people. The successful people that we know are the people that don't follow the rules. They're the people that break the rules. Because who made the rules to begin with? Mm-hmm. And like you said, they made the rules because this is how it's easy to market. This is how it's easy to make money. This is how it's easy to, churn something out. And, people like you, whether you want to think of yourself as a pioneer or not, you are. Karen is a pioneer. I'm a pioneer. We're all pioneers in our own way because we're passionate about what we do, whether it's writing or running our own business or being a publisher. So, you have the energy and you have the ability to share the stories, channel the stories, and start a new publishing model, and do the research so that co-ops can exist not just for yourself, but in the future, other people will have a model to follow.
Well, I mean, that certainly would be the dream. The dream is to have the company outlive us, and not only outlive us, but to have them publish, have them exist all over, where writers and editors can get back to doing what they love to do, which right. is, develop authors and engage in that dialogue and participate in the communication with readers. I mean, that's a beautiful dynamic. I personally feel like the author-reader dynamic is a sacred agreement that you make. And if you decide that you instead want to make your agreements with the publishing company, then that's awesome. But you're not going to have that sacred agreement. It's like I go to physical therapy because I have some back issues, and the physical therapy place has this great close relationship with my insurance company.
Right.
And so I'm just kind of there on the sidelines like, okay, you guys, when you guys are done making love to each other, then you talk to me about it.
Back, yeah.
Right. That would be awesome. But that's what it's like when an author goes to a publisher. They have a dynamic relationship, and the reader is like, okay, Mm-hmm.
Give me the book. All I want is the book. I want to read the book. And I think it's really great because we have a lot of new platforms, and like you said, you publish everywhere and in every format, including blogging on you're not blogging your book, you're publishing it on a website, which other people would call blogging a book. And it's just like you are giving people what they want to read in whatever format they want to read it in. And there are so many people that are still like, I only want to read in print. Well, great. We'll create a print book for you then. And, I published some books on the Kindle just to test the waters and see how things were. And, feedback from a couple of my friends, Karen knows who I'm talking about, sent me a message, well, I need the print version. And if you make the print version, I'll buy it. And my parents will buy it. And, because we want a physical book that we can hold in our hands. And yet there's other people that are like, they want their whole library to be on their e-reader. Because for them, then they get on the airplane and they can pick whatever the heck they want to read. They didn't have to bring 5 books with them. Or the book that only has 1 chapter left to be read, and then now you got to figure out which one you want to read next. You have it all there electronically. And it's all about giving people choices. And again, you found a need, you filled it, and you're listening to your customers who are your readers, if you want to put it in a business sense. Your customers are your readers, and you're fulfilling the need that your readers have by doing something that you're passionate about. Your editors are passionate about their part of the job. We aren't all writers. And some of us are good writers, some are good editors, some are good illustrators. Let everybody do their job without, agents getting in the way or putting you down because you don't fit some kind of niche that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think that is very well said. I couldn't agree with you more. I also think, again, you have to do what it is that you're passionate about because, the hail comes. And I've had people say just horrible things, to me and in reviews on Amazon and everything else. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then all that stuff is going to stop you. And again, in my words, I will have then failed these characters to really bring their story to life. And that to me feels bad.
That's awesome. Well, we didn't cover all the things I wanted to, but this has been a fascinating conversation about serial novels or serial publishing that I didn't know about before. And I probably have read serials but didn't realize it. So this has been great insight, and I really do want to talk to you again, do a follow-up in a couple of weeks about a lot more of what you do. And because we never even touched upon marketing, and I know, but
yeah, sounds fabulous. I'm happy to talk to you anytime.
Or the brownie contest.
Or the brownie contest. Oh yeah, that was really fun. Oh, no, that was really fun. Well, very quickly, we did a brownie contest because brownies are an integral part of Denver cereal.
Okay.
And so they're in the books. We had just the most amazing response. One woman went to the chapter and reconstructed the recipe that I had used to, I had a recipe in front of me that I wrote. She was making the brownies. She went through and made her recipe based on that chapter. We just had really incredible people. Made brownies, and then I wrote a story there were 5 Sundays in July, and I wrote a story to go around the brownie contest. And then, of course, none of us could decide what brownie we liked better. They were too different. And every time we got more people involved, they all agreed, we couldn't ever break out of our pattern of people, It's crazy.
And we know a woman in Denver who loves brownies. I can't stop thinking about Jen Goody, so we're going to give her a shout out.
Give her a shout out. We have the recipes up, so they're fabulous. Yeah.
And Jen's goodies are fabulous too. Jen Goody's brownies are fabulous too. And everybody who does good deeds for her, she always says, "Okay, I owe you a brownie." And, everybody always asks her where the brownies are because we're all internet people, so we don't actually meet in person very frequently.
We give virtual brownies, yeah.
Yeah, we give virtual brownies all the time. So
well, see, I would get your addresses and just mail them to you. I mailed out all the brownies to the board members. I did mail them out, and yeah. It was just crazy. So we'll do it again next year. The hope is to do it again next year and to have it just be something that's fun. I don't know if you guys saw. Oh, we should probably go, right? But I don't know if you guys saw Seth Godin's thing on, I don't know what the day was, but he was talking about the circles of marketing and how we always think about marketing as the clicks that we get or the ads that we do or introducing ourselves into other markets. But real marketing happens with the people who are right there in front of you and engaging your community. That's basically what the brownie contest was. People say they want more stories. We were in the middle of a story about a certain set of characters and they wanted to hear about the other characters and were complaining on Facebook. And so the story that happened on Sunday was just a simple little story of people getting together and eating brownies.
That's awesome. That is just so great. All right, well, we're going to wrap this one up, but we are definitely going to have you on again. And so where can people find you on the internet? Give us the name, because a lot of our listeners listen on iTunes, and
nice.
They need to hear where to go find you.
Right. Well, Denver Cereal is at denvercereal.com with a C, DenverCereal.com. And then you can find the Thriller series at alexthefay.com. You certainly can find me at Facebook, and that's claudia.h.christian. All of our stuff is up at Facebook. You can, to find me, gosh, it's pretty easy. If you type in Claudia in Denver, I usually come up. But you can find me on Amazon, and Smashwords is one of my favorite places in the planet. So all of the first books of the series, so the Alex the Fae series, the first one is the Fae. You can download that for free almost everywhere.
Can you spell Fae for me? Because I know there's a bunch of different ways to spell it.
It's F-E-Y.
Yeah, that wasn't one of them that I had in my head. So there you go.
It's Alex. It's ALEX. THEFEY.com.
Okay.
And you can download the first one of that series for free. You can download the first Denver Cereal for free. And it gives you a chance to see if you like it. It's one of those things that people either like it or they don't. And so it gives you a chance to read them, and they're full books. You can do with them whatever you want to.
Okay. Twitter, Facebook?
Twitter, I'm Claudia C. Facebook, it's claudia.h.christian's my page. And then, there's the Alex the Fae page and a Denver Cereal page. and a Queen of Cool page. Oh yeah, thequeenofcool.com is where the mystery in Fort Worth. That's kind of intense. So if you like really emotional mysteries, that's what that is. And it's thequeenofcool.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have a blog at onalim.com. So, but again, if you just type my name into Google, something's going to come up.
As long as the other woman doesn't come up.
Yeah, make sure you include the hall.
Right. That is not me in those pictures.
That's really funny. And as always, we want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. Claudia, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your insights and your passion. And it really comes through in what you talk about. So for those of you that are listening on podcatchers or on iTunes, please go to BookGoodies.com, BookGoodies.com, and you can search for Claudia there, and you'll find the right Claudia and the podcast with the show notes. And we'd love if you would comment. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those, in the thread on the particular podcast. If you want to be our guest, you can go to the top of the Book Goodies page and click on Contact Us, and it'll let you offer to be on our podcast. And you can also tell us about your books by clicking on Tell Us About Your Book. And as always, we like to thank Geekcast, GeekCast.fm, for hosting all of our podcasts and many more podcasts about internet marketing and marketing in general, and podcasts about people who work from home. And, of course, our wonderful author series is over there as well. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. So get out there, get writing, follow your passion, and have a great day.